In this lesson, we will explore the concept of constructors in Python, which are special methods used to initialize objects when they're created. Understanding constructors is essential for mastering object-oriented programming, OOP, in Python, as they allow you to set up the initial state of an object with meaningful attributes. Don't worry if this feels new at first. This section covers what's a constructor. A constructor is a method that's automatically called when an instance or object of a class is created. In Python, the constructor method is defined using the __init___ method. This method can take parameters that allow you to initialize the attributes of the object. The __init___ method isn't mandatory, but it's highly useful for ensuring that objects are created with the necessary data. Defining a constructor, let's dig in. To define a constructor in a class, follow these steps. First, create a class using the class keyword. Next, define the __init___ method within the class. Then, include self as the first parameter, followed by any other parameters needed for initialization. Finally, set the attributes of the object using self.attribute_name. Here's an example of a simple class with a constructor. Walk through the function definition shown in the code example. In this example, the dog class has a constructor that takes two parameters, name and age. These parameters are used to set the attributes self.name and self.age. This section covers creating instances of a class. Once a class with a constructor is defined, you can create instances of that class by calling the class name and passing the required arguments. Here's how to create instances of the dog class. The samples on screen walk through this step. Take a moment to read through them. In this code snippet, we create two instances of the dog class, my_dog and your_dog. We then call the bark method on my_dog and access the age attribute of your_dog. Now, using default values in constructors. Sometimes you may want to provide default values for certain parameters in your constructor. This way, if no value is provided when creating an instance, the default value will be used. Here's how to implement default values. Walk through the function definition shown in the code example. In this example, the age parameter has a default value of 1. This means that if you create a cat without specifying an age, it will automatically be set to 1. See the example on this slide. Pause if you want to study the details. In this lesson, we learned about constructors in Python. First, a constructor is defined using the __init___ method. Also, it initializes an object's attributes when an instance is created. Also, you can create instances of a class by calling the class name with the required parameters. Finally, default values can be provided for constructor parameters. Go ahead and work through this exercise. First, create a class called car with attributes make, model, and year. Implement a constructor to initialize these attributes. Also, add a method display_info that returns a string with the car's details. Also, create two instances of the car class and call the display_info method on both. Finally, modify the constructor to include a default year of 2020.